Hello. Today we have Daisy Brackenhall joining us, and this is a real treat to talk to you. We've been having quite a natter earlier, and you're out there sharing a lot of content about keto, ketogenic diets, how different diets work with for different people, and how enjoyable they can be, and how awesome a ketogenic diet lifestyle can be. But you have your own story, so would you mind sharing that with us, or?
Of course. Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you today. It's a bit scary being on the other side of the fence. I'm used to asking the questions.
Got you in the spotlight now.
Yeah. I have quite a simple story, and not as technical as a lot of people. Haven't been involved with food for health for as long as some people have, but my story has been one about weight gain, really, from a very, very early age. But with that, especially with hindsight, came depression and headaches was a big thing for me, really, from about 10 years old. That just got worse and worse, and my weight increased more and more as time went on, to such a point where I actually was twice the body weight I am now, which was, I got to about, in English money, about 21 stone. So yeah, clinically morbidly obese, and actually decided to have weight loss surgery. And started off with the band, which is a dreadful procedure, which I wouldn't recommend to anyone. And to cut a long story short, that didn't work out well. And I did end up with a sleeve, although I lost confidence in the surgeon, and he wanted to replace one with the other when he finally took the band out and wanted to replace it straight away with the sleeve. And I kind of lost faith in him by then, because I'd had lots of problems. And I had at that point started to investigate more sort of low carb diets. At that point, I was actually looking at the Dukan diet, not really because I'd gone into it from that low carb direction, but it was just another diet that I think my brother had been doing. I'd been, like many people, had tried so many diets all my life and yo-yoing with weight up and down. And he just had a lot of success with it, and I tried it. I think I had actually tried Atkins a couple of years before that, and hadn't lasted very long, and just had that mindset of, this can't be healthy because there's so much fat. And so the Dukan appealed to me because it was low fat as well as low carb, but it made it incredibly difficult to stick to, of course. But then there was these 2 tablespoons of oat bran that you could have every day, that I made into all these muffins and things like that. But I did quite well on it. I did it for a few months, and I thought, well, I can lose the weight on my own. But then things went wrong, as they always do with me. Something happens, and the depression catches up, and the weight piles on very, very quickly. And it tends to be a very high carbohydrate, high fat diet that I would always turn to. Things like ice cream and crisps and cake and bread, and with lots of butter on it and things. That just that lethal combination, and my weight would skyrocket. And my weight went right back up. And so I went back to the surgeon, and I had the sleeve, which I got on very well with, and started losing a lot of weight. But very early on, things didn't feel right. I was following the instructions I'd been given, but they were actually to eat small meals very often, but quite high carb. I was actually told to eat a third of baguette with every meal, would you believe? I mean, I know it's France, I live in France, but still.
Ridiculous.
So, and everyone was saying, I can't eat much, I'm never hungry, but I was always hungry. And now, obviously, again with hindsight, it's because of all these carbohydrates that I was eating. They were saying not only to have carbohydrates with every meal, but all these snacks in between of things like yogurts and milky type puddings. So everything all the time. My blood sugar was up and down, and so I would go between being hungry and then eating these foods, and then getting hungry again and feeling sleepy. And sleep is something I've always used for as a treatment, if you like, with my depression. So I'd eat the kind of foods that would make me sleepy, and then I'd sleep to get out of it, really.
And And sorry, lots of emotional eating as well throughout all of this, by the sounds of it.
Completely. And emotional in the, yes, looking for those comfort foods, but often emotional when I was actually eating. I can remember a time, and the addictive quality. I was definitely addicted to certain foods. Mm-hmm. So I can remember going out, and Haagen-Dazs ice cream was my thing. And they started having it here, and I went out to get some on a Saturday and knew it was going to be closed on a Sunday, so bought something like 4 tubs to make sure I had enough for the weekend. And I can remember sitting there eating this ice cream, knowing it was making me feel bad, knowing it was not helping with my weight, tears streaming down my face, feeling dreadful, but still eating it because maybe it was comforting, but I knew it wasn't. And this cycle of just feeling miserable all the time, and knowing something wasn't quite right, even though I was doing what I was being told. And a friend of mine who I'd met online on one of the weight loss surgery communities told me about low carb, high fat. And so that's when I started to get much more involved with eating real food. You talk about real food, and I've always been someone who does cook and starts from basic foods, although I would end up making things. If I had the wrong kind of ingredients in the house, I would make cake and make biscuits, things like that. So I'm very much the kind of person who needs to clear things out of the house. And she told me about that, and she was actually someone who told me later on about the ketogenic diet. And that's when I joined the Facebook group, the Two Keto Dudes Facebook group. And I'd actually come off Facebook and had to go back onto Facebook just to join this community, and became involved. And they like to talk about the science of why we eat that way. And that's what drew me in. That's what Kirsten, a friend of mine, said when I was talking about good carbs versus bad carbs. And she said, well, actually, no, really all carbs are the same, and you need to drop your carbohydrate count to stop feeling hungry all the time, and to stop having the regain that so many people who have weight loss surgery end up having revision surgery, because they start regaining the weight. It's very easy to lose a lot of weight in the first year or two after surgery, but then as you start to heal and you start to be able to eat more again, if you haven't made changes to your diet, you just start regaining that weight again. They somehow think that you're going to be able to fit the diet mentality that they try and sell you, that you could never do before, that you suddenly think you can do post-surgery because you're forced into it, but you think you're doing it, but then when that assistance starts to wear off, all kinds of things, and you feel a failure. So of course all those things like depression and emotional eating all come back in, and that's why some people struggle.
And even with the surgery, they're not offering any psychological support. There's no kind of support and therapy or dietitian ongoing support.
Well, certainly not for me. It really depends where you are, which country you're in, but where you are in the country, whether you've had it through the National Health Service, or whether it's been private, or all sorts of things.
Yeah, but I'm really, really fascinated by the baguette advice. It just sounds utterly crackers. It just got to sound wrong to a professional to be kind of passing that over, thinking, well, a dietitian's wrote this, so it must be right. But it sounds absolutely ludicrous to kind of force that down you anyway.
Exactly, and that's what set alarm bells off for me. This can't be right.
Because that's quite a leap from your different kind of diet history to somebody telling you it's fats. We've got to kind of satisfy our body with fats and drop the carbs. It's a leap, a total leap from whatever we're being told by professionals, and in all of the literature, in our school meals, the way they're structured, everything, the Eat Well plate and different countries' guidance. It's a total leap into a different, and you took the leap and you believed it and you tried it.
Exactly. Fat has been, and I still have that person on my shoulder saying, it still has too much fat. Are you sure you should have all that butter? But that's what Kirsten said to me. She said, look, just don't just believe what I'm saying. Go, here's some websites. And I think she sent me to the Diet Doctor website and other places. She said, go and look for yourself. Go and look at the science. And that's what sort of drew me in. And then listening to the Two Keto Dudes podcast and getting involved as an admin in their group, and just learning, soaking up this information. And I actually did a science course as well, so really got to understand the things that I'd been reading, articles that I'd been reading, understanding, at a cellular level, looking at how a glucose molecule is constructed, and knowing that, when you're eating that baguette, that all that is all those glucose molecules stitched together that break down as soon as you eat them. So it made sense to me. I'm very logical, I have a very logical mind. So once I understand something,
yes,
it makes it a lot easier.
So how did your foods change then? What did it look like at that point, and then now what do you eat? What's typical kind of food that you eat on your ketogenic diet?
Well, the things like I mentioned before that I was always drawn to was the combination of carbohydrates and fat.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be, things like bread and butter, endless slices of toast with lots of butter and Marmite on, potatoes with butter, always that combination that really not good, but interspersed with good real cooking. My mum taught me to cook at an early age. She always cooked and used all the different bits, so when we had a roast chicken on a Sunday, and then there would be leftovers, perhaps bubble and squeak with the cold meat, and then anything else that might be stripped off, she might make a risotto out of it, and then she'd boil the bones up and to make the stock. And so I had all those different kind of cooking processes, which I think is a real advantage with the way we eat. Because all you need to do is take the basic ingredients, and if you know what to do with them, it makes life a lot easier. So although I still miss, and I'm not perfect by any means, and I do tend to slip up fairly often, and it's always linked to an emotional crisis, however extreme it is, but that sends me over the edge and sends me back to these habit forming comfort foods. They're not actually a comfort food now, I know that, and I can break the cycle a lot easier than I used to be able to. But so I just eat real whole foods, and I try and stay away from anything that's refined, and I do eat a ketogenic diet, so I do cut all those sort of typical starchy carbohydrates out, and I just don't have them in the house, because if they're in the house, I will eat them. So I tend to eat very simply and quite repetitively. Every morning I have bacon and eggs. That's what I have every day for breakfast. And I love it. I make scrambled eggs and incorporate lots of butter, so real buttery scrambled eggs and bacon. And my dogs, actually, I make extra scrambled eggs, and my dogs have some scrambled eggs too.
No wonder they look so happy. I didn't mention.
I tend to.
Oh, I was going to say, you're in France as well, so that just kind of an extra factor on that butter and that meat that you're getting, locally produced and like good quality.
Exactly. It is, I would say overall, actually, yes, the quality is probably a little bit better. But, getting similar these days. There's a lot more of the refined and processed stuff coming here now. There's still, it's... hardly anything compared to the UK, but I have noticed, I've been here for 15 years now, and where there was nothing, or there might be a tiny little place in the supermarket, now there's a lot more, but still a fraction of what there is in the United Kingdom. There might be an area in France where there's whole aisles and aisles of it in British supermarkets. So it kind of makes it easier. On that score. I know when I'm in the UK walking around a supermarket, there's this temptation everywhere, and always trying to, well, just buy one and we'll give you another one for free. All the things that tempt me, and they're jumping out at me all over the place, and I have less of that here, so that makes it easier. I'm that kind of person, like I say, I can't have the things in the house. And so I don't go shopping very often, and I keep away from things like that. I tend to usually just eat 2 meals a day. So I'll have usually brunch of my bacon and eggs, and then an evening meal of usually meat. I'm a real meat eater, but meat and veggies, basically, very simple. And sometimes I'll make some kind of dessert. I do have a bit of a sweet tooth. I quite like it's a really nice 85% chocolate that I buy here that I have sometimes. I sometimes make keto ice cream in the summer. So very, very simple. That's what I like about it, really. I tend to fancy it up a bit when I've got people coming over for dinner, and I might make, a bit more keto baking, might make some crackers and some different, more fancy desserts, maybe cheesecake or something like that. I do enjoy cooking, and I cook for other people, but for myself, I tend to just keep it quite simple.
I mean, it sounds delicious. I think you mentioned there that you like the simplicity of keto, and my I love of keto is and low carb is that it's just is simple for me. I think people kind of when they're looking at it initially think it's so complex, but it really is about just kind of cutting out some things that are probably doing the body harm, and definitely kind of upping our carb ratio, and going back to meat and veggies. I think we really similarly. Bacon and eggs I absolutely love, and the children absolutely love, and we do a bit of baking because it helps me with the packed lunches. Just low carb, low starch veggies, and lots of kind of nice quality meat. Just ever so simple. You need that kind of repetitive repertoire just to get through the weekdays, I think, and then kind of when you're in the mood for a bit more cooking and baking and ice cream, and then go for it. We had a real big session of baking at the weekend. But the other thing I really like about what you've done in your journey is you're just so open and honest, and by you being kind of wearing your heart on the sleeve and sharing that you're not a perfectionist, you're not perfect, and you slip up, we all do, but it's that I think that gives other people confidence, because it can feel like unattainable to get when people are saying, oh, it's this and it's that and you must do this. It just feels like, oh, I can't get to that level, I'm not even going to try it. But your podcast, which is I'll put the link here so people can go and check it out. I've really enjoyed getting to know it over the last few months, and how welcome you make everybody, no matter what their differences are, their journey, or how they approach keto and diet and food and lifestyle. I think it's a really lovely contribution to building a community. So how long have you how did you get into wanting to give back and building up that podcast?
Yes, it's actually coming up to a year now. I've got my year anniversary of the podcast in a couple of weeks.
Okay, cool.
And yes, it's fantastic. It was it's thanks to the two keto dudes. Just really getting involved with them and adminning and giving people advice, and it's kind of what you were just saying is what they saw in me, and the responses I would tend to give to people. I am quite empathetic, and I like to think I'm compassionate in dealing with people, and I'm very flawed myself. So I'm not the kind of person who stands up as that perfect role model, because I have slipped up a lot of times. But my experience in doing that is that I can show people how easy it is to get back on track. I never would have thought, with all my years, decades of having a troubled relationship with food, and constantly either be usually gaining weight or losing weight on one of my diets, is that I'd find changing my diet the easiest step to get back on track. When I'm feeling my worst, when my depression is really bad, when my migraines are really bad, and there's no doubt that when I'm eating off plan, that just makes everything worse, and it just goes round and round in an endless cycle, feeding on itself. The food feeds the depression and vice versa. The way I break that is back on track, back on ketone, back on keto, back on tracking my ketones, and I can literally, as I see myself producing ketones again, I can see my mood start lifting, and it's actually the easiest thing now I can switch to, and just focusing on what I can eat rather than what I take out and what I'm missing. But so it was my attitude and my interest in everyone's story that they wanted to start producing new podcasts, in particular one for women, hosted by a woman. And so they asked me, and it was something that I'd been thinking about for a while that I'd really like to do. So but wondering, you know, how can I do this? How am I going to be able to put a podcast out there? And so as soon as they mentioned it, yes, I would love to. And yeah, the idea for the show, the whole Extraordinary Woman thing, actually came out from my Facebook group, where I was surrounded by these ordinary yet extraordinary women all the time. And I say that for me, everyone has an extraordinary story. Everyone is extraordinary, however ordinary they think they are. They come on often when they're talking to me about, you know, before recording, and they're nervous, and why would you want to talk to me? I don't have an interesting story. I'm not extraordinary like all the people I've listened to on your show. And I just say, well, yes, but they all said that too. You know, you are extraordinary. I guarantee you have an extraordinary story. It's in there, and you have a fantastic story that's going to resonate with all the extraordinary, ordinary people out there. And so I just wanted, I wanted that intimacy. That's what I love about podcasts. It feels like you're overhearing someone's conversation, just the chat they're having, and it's relatable. And that's the thing with your story. You're very relatable. You're very easy to talk to. You're very approachable, and that's I think is how we fuel this change, is with the ordinary people.
Yes, who've made changes and are doing their bit. I think there's something about the keto lifestyle that once you've kind of been through it, and and you've seen the benefits, and with you the benefits of being really, really broad, and with me, my daughter, and then myself going on the ketosis diet and just enjoying it, and feeling it's actually more liberating than just eating carbohydrates, and I'm not craving food. I didn't even know I was craving food, and I don't have a sweet tooth anymore. I feel like I've got really sustained energy, and then I just became really passionate about it, and sharing that with everybody else, and then finding the podcast and hearing that. I think it's such a lovely way to tune in. Like you just said, it's really intimate, but also it's really handy and convenient to kind of drive around with it and listen to these women telling how they found it, telling their struggles, and some where they're still having struggles, and you kind of find a way around the problems you're having through listening to them, and get inspired and feel you're part of the community where you might be feeling isolated doing it on your own. It's lovely. Really, I really enjoy tuning into it. I was
exactly
also,
there are so many different stories, aren't there? And that's that's what I actually found with the difference between how effective the second weight loss surgery I had was finding the community online. You know, I had no kind of community the first time around, felt very isolated, very alone. But the second time around, I found this community online, and that's what made a real difference to me. And hearing all those different stories, and how, you know, there's no one particular way. It's, you know, you're bound to, all the stories you hear, you're bound to hear about somebody that's similar to you.
Yeah, I think online community, if you haven't got family support, it's wonderful. I mean, I think I've got a really great little network here, but the online community, I wouldn't have found ketosis, I wouldn't have found the ketogenic diet without the online community and real foods, and belief in that, and that information and answers to questions, and even just basic tips about what to cook and how to do a recipe when you're getting going and finding your feet. It's lovely, and it's lovely to know that there's another family in Canada in the same boat at the same time as you. It's people kind of bag the social media and the online communities, but they've been a massive saving factor, and you're doing an amazing job at bringing people together, and doing a lovely job of creating that community. So thank you.
Oh, I love it. I get to chat to usually women. I do have the odd man on, as I say, but just chat to women and ask them all sorts of questions and find out about their lives and be really nosy. What's not to like? It's fantastic.
Fascinating. It's completely fascinating. Making new friends, new connections, and learning how different people approach stuff. I think it's utterly lovely. It's like a dream job.
Yeah.
Have you got any final tip for anybody considering a ketogenic lifestyle, and or any final words of wisdom?
I have. It's something I ask at the end of every show is for a top tip, and I think, and it does relate back actually to the ethos behind the podcast, and hearing everybody's story and how different we all are, and that is to trust yourself. That's another thing that I like about keto actually, is that it tends to give people, especially women, confidence in believing in themselves, confidence in believing that they know what's right for them. And it's this concept of N equals 1, experiment of 1. What works for you? It's always been something that I've argued with in other Facebook groups, where somebody tries to tell me this is the way you have to do keto. That's not keto. This is keto. My way is how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to have this many protein grams, this many fat grams, on and on, telling me what to do. And no, what works for me, what I know what works for me, I can take on advice from different people and listen to different people's stories if I'm struggling and maybe need to switch things up. But it's to find that confidence in yourself, trust yourself, and nobody's going to be a better expert on you than you. And that's what I like to encourage, and that's what I like to show with the women who come on my show every week. Everyone has a different way of doing things, and everyone has a different approach that works for them. So that's what it is. It's finding what works for you, and gaining the confidence to stand up to anyone who tells you they know better, because they don't.
I think that's an awesome tip, and I think it really comes across in your podcast as well. You give that ability, and you kind of tease that out, that people are doing things differently. And I mean, I've been doing the keto diet with my daughter for 4.5 years, and with myself low carb and in and out of ketosis. And it's weird that sometimes I think, I'm not doing ketosis properly. I'm certainly doing medical ketosis properly, low nutrient and right ratios and everything. But with myself, sometimes when you kind of are faced with a barrage of information, and this is the way it needs to be done, I've been quite doubting myself. And it's really reassuring. Your podcast is very much that, there's different approaches, and it's what suits, and it's what's right for you. And I think it's definitely a really, really helpful voice in the community, really authentic. So awesome, and an awesome tip. Thank you.
I'm glad you enjoy it, because I love doing it. I love it.
Oh, it is. It comes across as well. But thank you. Thanks for giving me your time today, and spending time chatting with me. And good, because we met briefly at the PHC, but we didn't get time to chat at all at the conference earlier in the year. So really nice connecting with you, have a good chat online.
Yes, well, thank you, and thank you for becoming one of my extraordinary women.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.